Hi, I'm Hamish Irvine. I'm part of the ICMJ committee, and we're here today to look at how we judge a pork carcass class. So firstly, when we're judging pork carcass classes, we must remember that we've always firstly got to look at trimness, and then we move on to muscling, and then we move on to quality attributes. So it's important that we always look at trimness first, because this is essentially where all the points are given in the competition, and this is how we judge pork carcasses. So firstly, we'll look through our pork carcass and just point out the points of reference where we're measuring trimness, we're looking at muscling, and also the other points we look at in terms of reference points that can be asked as questions. So we're just comparing these two carcasses from this side at the moment. So firstly, starting on the back end, we look at collar fat around the collar region. So when we're comparing collar regions, you'll see between these two carcasses, we're looking at the fat thickness around there and also across the collar region there. The next point we move on to is basically down the back line. This is a really good indicator of how fat a carcass is, and is probably the best place to start when we're judging pork carcasses. So the first point of reference we look at is this area here, which we call the lumbar line. So this whole area we call the lumbar line, and then this muscle here specifically is what we call the gluteus medius. So this is the first point of reference we look at when looking at trimness across the back end. The next points we look at are across the last rib here, across the first rib here, and then also across the clear plate. So that's these regions here. So basically we're making points of reference, how trim, how lean the carcass is on those references, and putting that together to get a good trimness score across them. So the next thing we look at is on the other side of the carcass. So as I said, we look at the collar fat, then we move into the belly pocket here, so fat through the belly pocket, across the navel edge here, and then into the sternum. So basically we're looking across all of these different points and making a judgment call between the two carcasses as to which one's leaner. You'll see definitely that this number 3 here, number 3 carcass on the left, is definitely the leanest carcass in the class. So he would go up, and then this one would go down to the bottom of the class. Then what we do is look at these carcasses here on the other side, and firstly look at leanness again. Now when we start at the ham here, and we look at mainly across the sirloin-loin junction. This is the best place to judge leanness around the ham. Basically what we're looking for is some definition there. The more definition you get and the sharper the angles are in these areas, the leaner the carcass is. The less definition means it's been filled full of more fat. The next good point of reference is in the elbow pocket here. There isn't much dip in there at all, whereas here there's a lot of dip there, meaning there's less fat in that area. So again, a good area to judge trimness and leanness across this end of the carcass. Moving on to muscling. So as I said earlier, you should always do trimness first and then move on to muscling in these areas. So when we're looking at the hams, we're looking for something that's bulging, more round, more plump, and that's a good indication of how much muscling is in the ham there. Another thing we look at is across the shoulder there. Basically, you'll see the one on the left is a lot rounder, a lot wider, so therefore there's a lot more muscle in those areas. So basically, going on those two carcasses, that's what we primarily look at in terms of judging those carcasses from muscling and trimness point of view on that side of the carcass. A few points that we have to note on these are just basically observations. We look at feathering across the ribs here, so the more white, the more covering of fat there are across these ribs, basically gives an indication of more feathering, which is a quality attribute, which should only be taken into consideration as an observation, not to rank carcasses or score carcasses. The other thing we look at is sexing across the carcasses. The easiest way to do this is to look at where the testes have been cut out on these carcasses. You'll notice that on castrates there's a dip where the testes have been cut out, whereas on females there's no dip there, so it should be easy to tell there. So that's how we're judging a pork carcass class. Always remember that we're firstly looking at trimness, then muscling, then moving on to those quality attributes and other observations. Good luck with your training.